Hi again, everybody. John Springer. This is Winsight Live. I'm here in New York. I'm here with Kat Martin, senior, content director at Winsight Grocery Business in Denver. Our senior editor Jen Straley in Chicago. From CSP is Brett Dworsky, and we're here as always with Phil Lempert. Phil, let's begin with a couple of real quick things that happened this week. We heard from Stop and Shop. They are actually not going to pursue the deal with King Cullen. After all, we've been waiting about a year and a half for that deal to be complete. Similarly, the distributor United Natural Foods said yesterday that they were going to call off the sales process of its Cubs food stores and certain of the Shoppers food stores that they've been unable to get rid of in the 2 years since they've acquired Super Value. What's interesting about that is that, on the one hand, you've got kind of a bad M&A environment where, the shareholders wouldn't approve of the price they would get if they were to sell Cubs. On the other hand, Cubs having the best year it's had in many years because of its market share in Minnesota and the huge shift from food away from home to food at home. And so that's really kind of put a whole weird new trajectory on the deal space. So that's what's on my mind, Phil. What's happening with you?
Well, John, going back to King Cullen for a second, I was really surprised that Ahold stepped away from that deal because it did make some sense. King Cullen has had a strong presence on Long Island. Stop and Shop has some stores on Long Island. It just seemed natural for me that it would come, and I think that what we're starting to see also is we're going to see more of these M&A activities really point to COVID-19 as the reason that they're not going forward. And I guess I wonder, is that an excuse more than reality? What do you guys think?
I think there's more to it than I think COVID-19 is the thing. I think I don't know this, and they didn't say anything about this, so I want to be careful not to pass along information that's not out there. But I think it was widely assumed that this deal would engender some Federal Trade Commission scrutiny. It wouldn't be the first time that Ahold Delhaize, if you're old enough, you remember they tried to buy Pathmark about 20 years ago. The FTC mandated so many store sales out of that thing that Ahold eventually walked away. Now, I think there was probably some complication involved then in, who's going to take over which sites, what have you. Long Island, there's a lot of activity going on. It's almost like every grocer there is new in a lot of ways because it's no longer King Cullen's market. Wallbounce is gone. Lidl and Aldi are new. ShopRite is got a stronger presence than it used to. Stop and Shop, which kind of got there by acquisition and never really established itself, is establishing itself through its renewal program. And so we're going to see, King Cullen stores be dispersed, I would imagine, at some point, but it's just not going to be most of them going to Stop and Shop, at least not yet.
So yesterday, the Consumer Price Index came out. And what's fascinating to me and scary to me at the same time, when we look at the numbers for every item, all items on the index, it's 0.1% increase. Food, 4.0, food at home, 4.8. And we look at some of the numbers that are dramatic. For example, beef, increased 10.8% in May. That's the largest ever monthly increase for meat. It was driven mostly by a 3.7% rise in the index for meats, poultry, fish, and eggs. What do we think? Do we think that food inflation is here to stay and grow and grow and grow? Because keep in mind that a lot of these numbers really don't reflect the fact that there's not including meat, but there's over 60 food processing plants that are now closed in the country because of COVID-19 and their workers having become infected. So we haven't even seen the results of those shortages yet that are going to drive up more prices. Jen, what do you think?
Yeah, I think prices are going to stay high for a while and maybe forever. The news is interviewing families with kids, and of course everybody's at home. It's 3 meals a day at home now, and the not only are they going through food faster, but when they, get to the checkout stand, their tab is $100 more, per grocery trip than it used to
Yep.
be. Pretty significant changes.
And
I'm
Kat,
also, I'm also surprised. Maybe it's just because we're in the industry and we've been reading about this for a month now about how prices are going up. I just happened to read an editorial in a local newspaper, and it was, a customer complaining about the price of beef in their Piggly Wiggly, and that they thought that it was the grocer that was price gouging. And it kind of took me by surprise. I'm like, do you not watch the news? Like, I feel as though, everywhere that price of beef in particular is going up and skyrocketing. So I also think the grocers themselves do maybe have to do a little bit more work in explaining to consumers why they're seeing the higher prices in the store. You would think most consumers would know by now, but apparently some do not. So I think this opens another avenue of communication for retailers to kind of, hopefully address what's going on and why, for a family, the grocery tab is going up $100 in a month.
It's going to be really interesting, to your point, Kat. I mean, right now, inflation is running higher than grocers would like. They would like a nice, steady, low inflation, so they're doing more and more each year. And what we've seen really over the past 2 years is kind of these wild swings. There hasn't been a moment beyond maybe the past few months where inflation was at a rate where, one, consumers weren't freaking out about it, and two, it could also help grocers because they don't want deflation, obviously,
right?
And they all want to make more money, but it's a matter of managing it for the family. There's this other aspect of a recession that we're in that's going to affect people. The pullback in promotions, I think, has mattered. So these things are all in play.
So I was surprised to see yesterday, and Brett, this is probably going to have a bigger effect on your space than on grocery, but Starbucks has said that they're closing 400 stores. Normally they close 100 stores a year. They had planned to open up 600 this year. They're only opening up another 300, and they're really transitioning to more pickup locations that are designed for on-the-go customers instead of their traditional cafes. What impact, first, what do you think about Starbucks closing that many stores? And what do you think the impact is going to be on C-stores?
That's a great question, Phil. Just to start with Starbucks closing, I mean, that's really huge. The biggest coffee chain out there. That just shows how hard this pandemic has really hit coffee shops in general and their company as a whole. And then its effect on convenience stores. We will see. I mean, customers go to convenience stores to grab their coffee because they're in and out in a couple seconds, or sorry, in 5 minutes,
Right.
So if anything, this will put a lot of pressure on C-stores because folks are going to be able to grab their Starbucks in a few minutes as well. So we will see what the ripple effects of this become, but it's for real.
So, John, the report didn't go into how many supermarkets do have Starbucks and whether or not they're planning to close any of those. What do you think?
It's a possibility, Phil. I hadn't taken a real close look at it yet. What I would point out is that they're still opening 300 stores if you take out weekends. That's one new store every day over the course of the year. So it's not like they're disappearing or going away. And are you guys familiar with the folk singer John Wesley Harding? Has a great song. It's called "There's a Starbucks Where the Starbucks Used to Be." He talks about so I mean, that's been a way of life in the U.S. for 10, 15 years now, and so a little bit of pullback given all this stuff probably matters. For supermarkets, if their Starbucks pulls out, that's probably a little bit of a blow to them. Maybe it's an opportunity for them to do a local brand.
Do it themselves.
And
Yeah.
get them in.
So, Jen, what's going on in Pittsburgh with Giant Eagle these days?
Yeah, this was interesting. They're one of the latest grocers to announce that they're putting money towards the promotion of social justice, $350,000. But they're also doing some other things. they're closing some of their stores for, I think it's like an hour time period to discuss racial injustice. And then most interestingly, they are, deciding how they're going to spend their money differently. They are no longer advertising with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and they will no longer carry that newspaper in their stores due to some editorial that seemed racist to them. And they also prevented a Black reporter and Black photojournalist from covering the protests.
So, Kat, what do you think about this?
What I really liked about it was the fact that they're taking a stand by closing the stores for an hour and allowing their associates time to speak about this. Obviously, this is something that impacts them on a very personal level. And I think it is great that they're allowing them the time to discuss that within their own store. I'm assuming some training will probably come out of this on both the associate level and maybe management level. But I just think it's a great step where they're taking this seriously. They are devoting some serious time to their associates' welfare and well-being, and being able to speak about how this is, impacting their lives, and where they can go from here.
So, Brett, talk to us about Casey's earnings. John talked a little bit about some financials up at the top, but what's going on with Casey's?
Sure. Casey's the other day released their fourth quarter earnings, and my colleague Greg Lindenberg wrote up a great report on it. And I'm going to stick to the food service specifics here because that's kind of what we're covering here. But if anyone's interested in learning more about the fuel margins or general merchandise, they should definitely read Greg's story on CSP Daily News. So Casey's CEO, Darren Rebelez, said that the pandemic has created one of the most challenging environments the C-store industry has ever seen. And Casey's same-store sales of prepared food, fountain, grocery, they were all down because of stay-at-home restrictions. In the
All
fourth quarter.
down.
All down.
That's
Specifically,
the opposite of what we've seen in the supermarket world, that everything has been up dramatically.
Right. So, and again, this is, fourth quarter specifically. So same store grocery and other merchandise sales were down 2%. But the big loss was on the prepared food side. So in the fourth quarter, same store prepared food and fountain sales for Casey's were actually down almost 14%, which is quite large. And as a result of the restrictions on self-serve food, coffee, and fountain, total sales for the fourth quarter were actually down almost 10%, which is huge. And Casey's being one of the 5 largest convenience store chains in the country, they operate they operate about 2,200 stores in 16 states in the country. That's a hard hit for them, but they have a history of being a very resilient brand and chain. So it is to be seen what the rest of their outlook in the year looks like. But I think they will bounce back.
Yeah, what are they going to do?
They have not spoken on what the rest of their outlook through the year will look like.
So Brett, did they have to shut down their pizza operation? Is that why sales were down so much, or could they still continue with the pizza operation?
I'm not 100% sure what they did with their pizza. Just like a lot of other chains, self-serve, roller grill, coffee bars, fountain, those were halted. In terms of their pizza, I'm not quite sure, because pizza is, when we think of food delivery, pizza is what comes to people's mind most, and pizza is what they're known for. So I'm not sure what happened with their pizza operations, but with everything else, with self-serve and coffee and fountain getting hit, it was definitely a rough quarter.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. IFIC just released their latest report on Tuesday, their latest survey. They've been doing this survey, I think, now for about 20 years. I know, Kat, that you're a member of IFIC. And obviously, a lot of it has to do with COVID-19. What they found is roughly half of Americans are concerned about eating food prepared outside the home, whether it's in a restaurant or delivered. That dieting is up. versus 2019. 43% of Americans followed a specific diet or eating pattern in the last year. That's up from 38% in 2019 and 36% in 2018. The number one diet, anybody want to take a guess at what that is?
Keto.
Keto.
Yeah.
Anybody, John?
All pizzas. No.
No, Brett?
Yeah, I said keto.
Oh, you did. Okay. Nope.
Yeah.
You're all wrong. Intermittent fasting,
Ah.
which is among probably the most dangerous diets that are out there. Clean eating, which was number one last year, has dropped to second place. Also, about 1 in 5 Americans are using some sort of health monitoring device or app. It could be about diet and food consumption, exercise, physical activity, or overall health. Using those devices are more common amongst women, parents, those with higher income and education, those in urban areas, and those following a diet. No surprise. What's interesting to me is 2/3 of those people say that it's led to healthy changes that they otherwise wouldn't have made. So get out your Apple Watches, guys. 28%.
Bill, were these?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, was this data collected before COVID-19 or during COVID-19? Did
I
they?
think, yeah, they do the annual survey, and a few weeks ago they did a post COVID-19. So this is over the course, I believe, and I have to check that it started in December and went through May, but
Okay.
I have to look that up.
That's astonishing. I thought all the diets were out the window now. And
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's quarantine.
need
There are
to
no
gain, like-
rules in quarantine.
Yeah. So 28% of us are eating more protein from plant sources. No surprise, 24% are eating more plant-based dairy. 17 are eating more plant-based meat alternatives. Big surprise for me is fewer Americans are trying to limit or avoid sugars. And maybe that's a COVID-19 thing. And on a sustainability standpoint, they say almost 60% of consumers say it's important that the food products they purchase or consume are produced in an environmentally sustainable way. And 40% say the same about knowing food was produced using farming technologies that seek to reduce the impact on natural resources. So what do you guys think about all that stuff?
Continues the trend. Well, again, I know you said that clean eating or clean diets, what you refer to, was down, but that pure food trend's been going on for 5 or 6 years. And it's what people say, right? Not necessarily what they do. And
Right.
I think that that's reflective then of the kind of the changing times as well. So intentions matter though in these things, I know. So and it gives food retail. If you're a food retailer, I guess this is a little bit of a roadmap of where your customer base is going.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, to all the retailers and everybody who's watching this and listening to it, make sure you go to IFIC's website and download the report. It's about 74 pages, and those are just some of the highlights from it, but there's a wealth and dearth of great information there. Sorry, Jen.
Yeah, I was just going to
Okay.
say the point on the sustainability of how food is produced and how important that is. It'll be interesting to see how much the market does change. I think with COVID-19, a lot of attention was put on how our food is produced, especially in our meat. And it'll be interesting to see if some of these more humane practices become broader scale, and if it has any change on the manufacturing side and the farming side. Consumers continue to say this is something that's of huge interest, and they might take their dollars elsewhere if they don't like what they've seen coming out from some of the manufacturers.
Now
that's a great point. I mean, Amazon made a point that their entire chain is to be sort of COVID free, and that's a longer term vision for them. But I think that that's a good direction of where the industry might be going.
And have you all seen those in my opinion, fabulous Amazon commercials that they just started running with the real people working and talking about COVID and everything else. Whoever came up with that campaign, I thought was brilliant.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it just reinforces, John, what you were saying. You know, show of hands, let's be very visual here. How many of you think that now that we're eating more meals at home and cooking more at home, that food waste is on the decline?
Hmm.
Nobody. You guys are right. It's not. And one of the
Trick
reasons,
question. Obviously a trick question, Phil.
yeah, I guess I'm not that good at that. Okay, sorry about that. But one of the reasons for that is, and New York City had a program that they just halted about food scraps. That, you know, people had these bins that they could put food scraps in, and that they would be collected. New York stopped that as a result of COVID-19, but I was surprised to find that only 326 towns and cities in the US, that's less than 2% of American communities, offer curbside food waste collection. And it's estimated that food waste during the pandemic is going up higher than probably we've ever seen before, because people have nothing to do with it. And I would have thought that a lot of people, especially now with the recession, are saying, you know, we want to make the most out of every meal. So, you know, if we've got a little leftovers here, we're going to use it for the next time and so on. But it doesn't look like we're doing that.
Yeah, I was in a neighborhood where you know this food scrap pickup was taking place, and I got to say, like you know, it requires people to participate in it, and you know, so I think there was some mixed success. You know, in the summertime, you don't want to be walking past one of those brown containers because it doesn't smell good, and so it wasn't perfect, this program, but I think, you know, a lot of times these programs that are coming from governments, you know, they're sort of a way to start the conversation and make the problem people aware of the problem. So you know, it's all to the good. I think that they did it and they tried it, and I can understand why they're winding it down for the time being, anyway.
And we've got a comment on CSP's Facebook from Frank White. Frank is asking, can that chart be shared? Frank, just so you know, all of our episodes are archived on Winsight Grocery Business, on Winsight Grocery Business Facebook page, on Supermarket Guru Facebook page, and on CSP's Facebook page. We've got to get Brett to make sure it goes on the website as well. So there's not to steal Jen's, you know, good news segment. We're going to do that in a second, but I just came across a fabulous program that I did not know about. It's called Curds and Kindness, and it comes from Dairy West. It's actually a collaboration between dairy farmers, dairy companies, and local community partners. What they're doing is they're identifying milk and other dairy products that would be disposed of, who basically matches it up with schools, feeding sites, and food bank programs. It's in Idaho, Utah, and Southern Nevada. Started on May 1st. And from May 1st to May 29th, they were able to distribute 750,000 pounds of dairy products, Swiss cheese, cheese curd, mozzarella, butter, yogurt, and milk. I think that's very cool. Jen, top that with your good news.
I don't know if I can top that. No, there's a lot of, you know, the good news is there's a lot of good news out there. You know, I've been seeing that Save Mart in California, they've been donating a truckload of food to, you know, people in need every week for weeks now. And then also just saw something on Cauliflower. It's a brand that
Yep.
makes frozen cauliflower based, you know, pizza crust, pizza, now lasagna. And they just donated, along with the American Heart Association, 800 boxes filled with fresh produce to families in South Central LA.
So, you know, you're bringing up a good point, because what I've noticed is a lot of food companies, and I would include some retailers, who are donating food. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily their end product that they're donating. To your point with Cauliflower. So what I'm sensing is that people, the companies are really understanding what people need versus what they want to get rid of. Could it would have been much easier for the company to say, okay, we're going to give 800 cases of cauliflower pizza to
Mhm.
people, but they're really taking the effort and listening to what consumers want and making sure that's the food that's being delivered. We were on a conversation the other day, Tony and I, with Feeding America, and they've really expanded their outlook, their programs, everything they're doing. And the bad news is that they're anticipating that over the next couple months, in addition to the 38 million people who are in need of food, there's going to be another 17 million people that are added to those ranks as a result of both COVID-19, as well as the recession. So we really need to pull the industry together to help each other.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and we're seeing some different, from the technology end of it. We're seeing a lot of interesting apps that will, do dynamic pricing and those kinds of things in supermarkets in order to one, sell the food before they donate it. But I think technology is going to play a role in that, as in almost everything else that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I would agree. And, John, outside your window, I hear your Hell's Angels group waiting for you to
Yeah,
get
they come
ready.
by. We had a guy that was, if you heard crackling before, there was a construction work. We just gotten back to work, so I think it was the roofer putting a ladder on the top of his van, was parked right out front. So that's what
Yeah.
you heard.
Well, we don't want to keep your buddies waiting. So with that, we're going to end up today's Winsight Live, and we want to thank you all for joining us again. Just a reminder, all of these episodes have been archived, and we're looking forward to your involvement. And be safe. Have a great weekend. It's Thursday. We'll be back Tuesday, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, 12:30 p.m. New York time or Eastern time. And we'll see you on Tuesday and Thursday at those times. Thanks for joining us.